So my kids set up a little lemonade stand. Just some paper cups, a cardboard sign, and a couple bucks worth of lemons. Nothing fancy. It was hot, people were smiling, and for once, the neighborhood actually felt like a community. Then out of nowhere, Karen comes stomping across the street, phone in hand, yelling about permits and violations. At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She actually called 911 on a couple of kids selling lemonade. But what happened next? Let's just say the officers who showed up didn't exactly see things her way. And when they found out who my wife is, Karen went pale. I stared out the window as the flashing lights approached. My kids' joyful chatter mixed with the sudden tension that rippled through the street. I knew we were about to experience a showdown that would shake our quiet block. Little did Karen know, our family wasn't ordinary at all. We were a unit that stood up for what was right, and today was no exception. Our neighborhood, Sunnyvale Acres, was known for its close-knit community and its charming simplicity. Tree-lined streets and front porches laden with flowers were the norm. Neighbors greeted each other by name, and the annual block party was a highlight of the summer. In this idyllic setting, small acts of kindness flourished, like the tradition of a neighborhood lemonade stand during hot afternoons. I had always taken pride in raising my two kids to be independent and friendly. Every summer, they would set up their humble lemonade stand right on the corner of our driveway, where our modest house overlooked a small, bustling park. With a handmade sign and a basket full of freshly squeezed lemonade, their stand was a symbol of youthful enterprise. Parents would stop by, kids would trade stories, and for a few hours, Sunnyvale Acres united over the simple pleasure of sweet refreshment on a scorching day. Then there was Karen, a longtime resident who had earned a reputation for being the unofficial enforcer of every rule in the community. Known in hushed tones as HOA Karen for her relentless habit of reporting every perceived infraction, she took it upon herself to maintain what she saw as order. Always immaculately dressed, clipboard in hand, and phone at the ready, Karen's mission was to preserve the picturesque nature of our neighborhood, even if it meant overstepping boundaries. Over the years, she had sent numerous warnings and fines for everything from mismatched garden gnomes to improperly hung holiday decorations. I had never thought much of her hypervigilance until that fateful summer day. While my kids' lemonade stand was innocent and joyful, a beacon of community spirit, Karen saw it as a disruption to her cherished order. Her sudden appearance, phone pressed tightly to her ear as she barked about permits and violations, was the final straw. I had always believed that life should be lived freely, that small entrepreneurial acts by kids were to be encouraged rather than quashed. It was this belief that set me on the path to defend our little stand and, more importantly, to challenge an overzealous enforcer who had crossed a line. My wife, a sharp and spirited woman with a reputation for standing up for our family, had long supported our efforts to maintain a welcoming, independent spirit in Sunnyvale Acres. A community organizer by passion and a volunteer at local schools by day, she believed in the power of unity and creativity. The fact that Karen had not only disrupted a harmless act of community building, but had escalated the situation by calling 911 on our kids was an affront that she and I refused to tolerate. In our home, laughter and love were valued over petty rules. Our kids had learned to share, to work hard for their small earnings, and to contribute to the neighborhood with kindness and initiative. And as the stage was about to be set for an epic confrontation, I knew that what happened next would not only defend our rights, but also reaffirm the values that had always guided our family. The lemonade stand had been going smoothly. On that sizzling afternoon, under the unrelenting sun, our stand became a small oasis. Locals enjoyed the refreshing drinks, parents watched their children play, and even the usually reserved Mr. Johnson stopped by for a cup and a smile. The atmosphere was pure, unpretentious community joy. But just as the day was reaching its peak, the peace was shattered by Karen's intrusion. She emerged from her meticulously groomed house like a storm, phone in hand, her eyes blazing with indignation. "This stand is unlicensed. You're violating city codes," she bellowed. The shout startled everyone, and for a moment, silence fell over the gathering. I remember thinking, this is absurd. Kids with a lemonade stand causing code violations? Before anyone could react further, Karen dialed 911. In the span of seconds, the hum of conversation was replaced by a growing buzz of alarm. Neighbors began to murmur, speculating wildly about what could have possibly forced Karen into such drastic action. My kids, initially curious and then frightened by the sudden commotion, started to retreat, their innocent smiles replaced by confused frowns. As the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, I stepped forward, determined to defuse the escalating situation. I tried explaining to Karen that the stand was a simple, age-appropriate act of entrepreneurship and community engagement. But she was inflexible. Her mind was set on enforcing what she believed was the only acceptable standard. Her voice grew shriller with every word, and within minutes, law enforcement had arrived. When the police officers stepped out of their cruiser, they were met not by a scene of potential danger, but by a group of dismayed and bewildered neighbors and two very scared kids behind a modest lemonade stand. The officers listened politely as I explained that our stand was nothing more than a community fundraiser, a safe and wholesome activity without any intent to break any rules. That explanation, however, did little to placate Karen. She persisted, launching into a tirade about permits, violations, and the need to protect the community. But what happened next changed everything. One of the officers, a calm, measured man with a kind smile, took a quick glance at my kids. He knelt down and spoke to them in a gentle tone, asking about their stand and what they were selling. Their answers were simple and heartfelt: lemonade, cucumber water, and joyful explanations of how they set up everything themselves. Then came the twist that no one expected. As the officer finished speaking to the kids, he turned to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, his tone firm yet courteous, "I have to inform you that my wife is the head of our local community services board. She's been known to champion initiatives like this one for years." The room fell silent. Karen's aggressive posture faltered momentarily as the realization sank in that the very people defending community engagement might be on my side. The officer continued, "Our records show that this lemonade stand has been operating with all proper permits, and its purpose is to bring the neighborhood together." His words rang clear, and a murmur of agreement spread throughout the gathered crowd. Seeing the support of law enforcement, and now with the added weight of the officer's personal connection, Karen's face turned a deep shade of red. Her argument crumbled under the dual pressure of police professionalism and community support. I could see my kids' relief as they tentatively emerged from hiding, their expressions slowly changing from fear to wonder. Neighbors who had been unsure about how to react now voiced their approval. Finally, someone stood up for our community. One resident remarked, "This is exactly what our neighborhood needs, a bit of heart and fairness." Social media messages began to stream in, with hashtags like #LemonadeJustice and #CommunityFirst starting to trend locally. But the confrontation wasn't over yet. Karen, her voice trembling with embarrassment and defiance, attempted to retort, insisting that her concerns were valid and that a strict community should not tolerate unauthorized activities. Yet, every word she said was met with a chorus of supportive claps and murmurs from the crowd, and even the officers maintained their composed stance. I could tell that Karen's 911 call had been her ultimate attempt to impose control, a desperate bid to enforce her own extreme interpretation of order at the expense of genuine community spirit. And as the officers turned their attention back to the kids' stand, reassuring them that everything was in order, I knew that this was a turning point for our neighborhood. In that charged moment, the power dynamic shifted. My kids, once shy and frightened by the interruption, now looked up at me with smiles of triumph. The officer's calm intervention had not only diffused the situation, but had also exposed the absurdity of Karen's actions. It was clear that what began as a petty vendetta was now evolving into a broader conversation about community, creativity, and the right to live without undue interference. In the hours and days that followed the incident, the story of the lemonade stand and Karen's overblown reaction spread like wildfire. Social media erupted as neighbors posted their own accounts of the day, sharing video clips of the surprising police intervention and the heartwarming scene of kids boldly selling lemonade. Hashtags like hashtag lemonade justice, hashtag community first, and hashtag Karen outrage began trending across the neighborhood networks. Local news stations picked up the story with an enthusiasm that was hard to match. Reporters filmed live segments outside the farm stand, where the atmosphere had shifted from tension to jubilation as residents celebrated the peaceful resolution. It's truly heartwarming to see a community come together, when even the most absurd attempts at controlling youthful energy are met with understanding and unity. One anchor remarked during a broadcast, his tone both amused and admiring. Within the HOA, debates and discussions were ignited by the unfolding events. At emergency meetings held behind closed doors, board members were forced to reckon with the undeniable evidence that Karen's 911 call had been an overreaction, a move that not only endangered community trust, but undermined the very spirit of neighborliness. Leaked minutes from those meetings painted a picture of a board divided between those still loyal to Karen's uncompromising vision and those who believed that true community spirit meant embracing creativity and positive engagement. One board member was overheard saying, "We must ask ourselves, are we here to stifle our neighbor's entrepreneurial spirit or to foster a community that grows together?" Such statements resonated powerfully with a growing faction of residents who had long felt stifled by the overly stringent rules. I took to my personal blog and social media accounts to chronicle every detail of the incident, from the initial shock of the 911 call to the warm, reassuring moments when the officers put my children at ease. My posts were filled with photographs of the little lemonade stand adorned with colorful paper cups, candid clips of the officers interacting kindly with the kids, and even screenshots of supportive messages from neighbors who had witnessed the event firsthand. Every piece of digital evidence served as a testament to the fact that the stand was not only legal, but a beautiful, small-scale celebration of community. The response was overwhelming. People who had long been quiet about the petty impositions of the HOA started speaking out. Neighbors shared stories of being harassed for minor infractions, and many expressed their gratitude for the intervention. "Today, those kids showed us that community matters more than red tape," one comment read, while another proclaimed, "When our children are empowered, the whole neighborhood rises." The digital landscape was buzzing, and the narrative was clear. The community was united against needless rigidity and arbitrary control. Yet, not everyone was ready to embrace this new spirit of freedom. Karen, initially defiant, found herself isolated in the midst of this public upheaval. Her subsequent social media posts, once filled with indignation, now carried hints of regret and even resignation. In a series of short, hurried videos recorded from her front porch, she attempted to explain away the incident as an honest mistake, a mere misunderstanding of community guidelines. However, every attempt to spin her story was met with even louder backlash from residents and an avalanche of supportive digital messages affirming the values of creativity and independent enterprise. As community meetings continued, residents began to organize a formal petition calling for a revision of the HOA's policies, a petition that gathered thousands of signatures in just a few days. The meeting in a local town hall became a symposium of voices calling for change, with impassioned speeches that highlighted the importance of fostering innovation and community spirit over rigid adherence to outdated norms. "Our neighborhood is not a sterile collection of rules," one resident declared. "It's a living, breathing community where every voice matters." The collective sentiment was undeniable, and every shared post and live stream provided further evidence that a new era was dawning. As the final public hearing approached, the tension in the community reached a fever pitch. I spent the nights carefully archiving every clip of digital evidence, videos, photographs, and interviews that documented the events of that turbulent day. I contacted local activists, community leaders, and even a few sympathetic officials to ensure that the full story would be heard. The final digital dossier was a montage of raw, unfiltered truth, a powerful counternarrative to the rigid one-sided enforcement that had long reigned over our neighborhood. On the morning of the public hearing, the atmosphere at the Cedar Ridge Community Center was electric. Families, elders, and young entrepreneurs all gathered, united by a shared desire for fairness and transparency. Signs bearing messages like community over conformity and no more arbitrary fines were held high. Every resident present represented a voice that had been stifled for too long, and now they were ready to reclaim their neighborhood. The digital petition, which had amassed an overwhelming number of signatures, was read aloud, its words echoing through the room and reinforcing the demand for accountability. It was clear to everyone that this issue, what started as a 911 call on a kid's lemonade stand, had grown into a movement for community empowerment and the defense of our collective rights. The stage was set for the final act, a dramatic showdown that would force the HOA board to either double down on outdated policies or accept a future defined by community spirit and creative freedom. The decisive moment arrived on a cool, clear morning at the Cedar Ridge Community Center. The packed boardroom was a mix of HOA officials, local law enforcement representatives, community leaders, and an impassioned crowd of residents, all gathered for the final public hearing that would decide the future of our neighborhood's enforcement policies. With confidence tempered by resolve, Councilwoman Teresa Morales stepped up to the podium. Her eyes scanned the room, meeting the determined stares of every attendee. After a full and thorough review of all the digital evidence, including time-stamped security footage, detailed usage logs, and heartfelt testimonials from our residents, we have reached a conclusion that cannot be ignored. Councilwoman Morales began, her voice clear and steady. It is unequivocally clear that the 911 call made by Mrs. Karen Wilson on our kids' lemonade stand was not only an overreaction. It was an abuse of authority fueled by personal bias. Our community's efforts to build a safe, inclusive space for our children and neighbors should be celebrated, not punished by arbitrary enforcement. A hush fell over the room as Morales continued. Effective immediately, the HOA board will rescind all sanctions and fines related to this incident and will launch a comprehensive review of our current policies. Furthermore, new guidelines will be established to ensure that community safety measures are based on solid facts and professional judgment, not on unfounded personal vendettas. Today, we make a bold statement. Our community stands for fairness, creativity, and the freedom to grow together. Her words resonated deeply, drawing murmurs of approval from every corner of the room. At that moment, a prominent community advocate rose to speak, a respected voice known for unwavering defense of individual rights. Today, we stand united, and we say loud and clear, no one in our community should have the right to call in trouble for acts of harmless creativity, he declared, his voice echoing in the packed hall. This hearing is not just about one incident. It's about ensuring that our community values the contributions of every resident. We demand that our rights be respected and our voices heard. His words were met with a resounding round of applause that filled the room with a renewed sense of purpose. Following this, a senior officer from the local police department presented the final dossier, an exhaustive compilation of digital evidence, expert analyses, and official statements that confirmed the legitimacy of the lemonade stand and the routine nature of the community activity. The evidence was irrefutable, and it painted a clear picture. The lemonade stand was a benign, even commendable community initiative. The internal review panel unanimously called for strict disciplinary measures against any abuse of power. The full report was scheduled for immediate public release, ensuring total transparency. Councilwoman Morales concluded her address with a powerful declaration. Let today mark the beginning of a new era for Cedar Ridge, a community where the rights of every individual, every child, and every creative spark are protected. Our vote today is a resounding declaration that we will not allow personal bias to override common sense and decency. Together, we stand for justice, accountability, and the unassailable right to build a community where every voice is valued. Her closing words, delivered with unwavering conviction, sealed the turning point in our struggle for fairness and freedom. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom shone with hope and determination, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The overwhelming digital evidence and the unified voice of the community forced the HOA board to take decisive action, a turning point that would forever reshape the policies of Cedar Ridge. The days of arbitrary fines and mindless enforcement were over, and a future grounded in fairness and community spirit was finally within our grasp. In the weeks following the historic hearing, Cedar Ridge experienced a remarkable transformation. News of the rescinded sanctions, the new community guidelines, and the sweeping reforms implemented by the HOA board spread quickly across local media and social networks, sparking vibrant discussions about property rights, community values, and the importance of rational decision-making. Editorials with headlines such as "A New Dawn for Cedar Ridge" and "Community United for Justice" celebrated the monumental changes, and hashtags like #CommunityFirst, #No More Arbitrary Fines, and #FairnessPrevails trended widely. Town hall meetings and community forums saw unprecedented attendance as residents gathered to share their own stories of resilience and creativity, and to envision a future free from the stifling grip of arbitrary enforcement. Neighbors, once intimidated by harsh regulations, now spoke openly about their right to live, work, and create an environment that celebrated individuality. Our community is built on the unique contributions of every single resident. One neighbor declared at a crowded meeting, his words ringing clear with renewed optimism. The atmosphere was charged with hope, a promise that Cedar Ridge would forever honor the rights and aspirations of its people. Within the reformed HOA board and local law enforcement, swift and tangible changes were implemented. Senior officials, led by Director James Carter and Lieutenant Marcus Reed, rolled out comprehensive training programs on ethical governance, cultural sensitivity, and the responsible management of community resources. Regular audits and transparent disciplinary procedures were established to ensure that every future complaint would be treated with fairness and that no resident would ever again be subject to arbitrary fines or invasive enforcement. Our duty is to uphold the rights of every member of our community, and today, we've taken a powerful stand for that principle. Lieutenant Reed stated at a follow-up press conference, reinforcing the collective spirit of justice. Community leaders and local civil rights groups also joined the chorus of change, organizing workshops and public forums that celebrated artistic and entrepreneurial freedom. Our voices have the power to reshape our community, a respected activist declared, inspiring a wave of solidarity among residents. The digital petition that had once served as a rallying cry swelled into thousands of signatures, each one a testament to the community's resolve to protect its freedoms. For me, the journey from confrontation to resolution was both a personal triumph and a transformative moment for Cedar Ridge. My decision to stand up for my kids' lemonade stand, a simple yet profound act of community spirit, had ignited a movement that transcended the boundaries of my front yard. The digital evidence that exposed the absurdity of Karen's 911 call became a symbol of our collective determination, a beacon for every resident who believed that creativity, community, and the rights of even the smallest voices should be honored. Karen Miller, once the feared enforcer of rigid rules, found herself increasingly isolated as digital records of her past overreaches surfaced online and were scrutinized by a community that had finally found its voice. Her influence waned, and she was slowly but surely relegated to a cautionary tale, a vivid reminder of the dangers inherent in unchecked authority. At a final celebratory event in the community park, residents, officials, and advocates gathered under the golden glow of the setting sun. A massive banner reading "Unity, Freedom, and Fairness" was unfurled between towering oaks, and heartfelt speeches filled the air with promises of a brighter, more inclusive future. Today, we celebrate not only the victory of our rights, but also the triumph of community spirit, Councilwoman Morales proclaimed. The standing ovation that followed was a powerful affirmation of our collective commitment to protect our freedoms and to ensure that such abuses of power would never again darken our neighborhood. As each new day dawned over Cedar Ridge, the legacy of that tumultuous day endured as a beacon of transformative change. The story of how a 911 call on a kid's lemonade stand was turned on its head, and how the community rallied to protect what truly matters, became a rallying cry for every resident who believed in justice and creative freedom. Every sunrise now carried the promise that in Cedar Ridge, truth, justice, and community spirit would forever prevail. In the end, what began as a small act of entrepreneurial joy turned into a watershed moment for our entire neighborhood. We emerged more united, more vigilant, and more determined to safeguard our rights against arbitrary enforcement. And as the sun rose each morning over our reclaimed neighborhood, it carried with it the promise that Cedar Ridge would forever be a place where creativity, community, and personal freedom were cherished above all else.